Wait a moment for Conjurma to get back in. But the talk title today is Hope and Fear. So while we were studying today, which we have a noon book study a number of days in the week, today we were reading Sokuzan's newest book, Addiction Awareness Meditation. And there's a teaching in here that we'll find in other places too. But the line that we read today, Sokuzan says, don't do anything unless you have to, because if you don't have to do something and you are doing something anyway, then it's usually based on hope and fear. Fear that something's going to go wrong and you need to get in there and monkey or meddle with it because you just can't leave the damn thing alone. Or hope that if I tweak this a little bit, it'll get better. And it's also a line that shows up in the Sadhana Mahamudra. The heretics and bandits of hope and fear are subdued and all experiences are transformed into crazy wisdom. And I wanted to bring some attention to that. They're considered heretics and bandits, something that's robbing our awareness. And according to the glossary of this book, it does show up another 4 times, all around the same idea of hope and fear. And that's something, there's even a sign here in town. I think using hope as a good thing, like this hospital here gives me hope. And we say it all the time, like, I hope you have a good day. So it seems like there's varying degrees of intensity with hope and fear. Maybe it's not so much that they're a problem, but maybe that they can easily be something that leads us astray or keeps us busy in a way that's not particularly helpful. And with that idea of them being bandits, it really is taking away what's possibly actually in front of us because we're hoping for something or fearing something, like Sokuzan talks about the 2 thens in time being something that isn't real. So for me, that the idea of hope and fear is a similar quality where we're not really seeing what's in front of us. We're projecting onto it a story around hope and fear, potentially. So what is hope? What is fear? Is that something we recognize when we're doing it? And I can't help but think of the teaching here. It's always about the awareness, always about awareness. There's a banner out in the hallway. It just has the word awareness on it 3 times. Awareness, awareness, awareness. So is that something that can be included in the awareness, how we are hoping for something better and fearing something worse? Is that taking away from what's actually there? Is it possible to include that? And he says a little further on in the text that things may be a certain way and you may have a desire to have things change to be a little bit better, a little bit different. All guesswork. It's all based on trying to get control of everything. And I found that last line really interesting when I read it today, that it's about control. Like, so how are hope and fear about control? That's not the first thing I would think about when hearing those. But there's something to that where we're hoping for a different situation. And if we focus in on that, maybe we can relatively steer something in that direction, go towards something that we hope. go away from something that we fear, but it's my understanding it's circular. So it's not that they don't work relatively, that you can't affect some change or that we don't hope for things for people. We say that every day when we're praying for everybody. I think the word hope is in there. So again, not about correcting it, but about becoming more aware of it. So our hope and fear is something that we're confused about. Are we sure when we're hopeful or fearful? I think these are all questions that can help us go further into um, the teaching of hope and fear. How do those concepts help us investigate further into our mind stream, into our life? Um, that's all I really have for right now. If there are any questions to help us go deeper, Zogazan, please.
So we tend to get trapped by our words in one way or another, and all words are just words, but they are different. Do you see some difference in wishing someone well by saying something like, I hope you have a good day, or may you have a good day? Is there a difference in that, or are they the same situation?
I think the intention would be the same, so the words might show up differently, and they might even mean something different for everybody. But in that example, it just seems like the intention is the same.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Okay.
Kabowing, what's being robbed by hope and fear?
I think the way it shows up, I just read this somewhere. I'll say what that is. That it robs us from our awareness or takes us away from awareness, what's in front of us.
Kabowing, could we be robbed without hope and fear?
It seems like that would be the case. Hope and fear only being a couple different examples. So you can make it go either way, where hope and fear are kind of including everything or just getting to more specific ways that we ignore things. So for me, it seems more like the three poisons would be the way of looking at that. With hope probably being like the passion, fear being the aggression, and then the ignorance of not being aware of that.
Kabowing, sometimes we talk about losing time or being robbed or having our time stolen. Does that involve hope and fear?
I'm not too sure. Could you maybe ask that a little bit differently?
Kabowing, can time be robbed or stolen?
I think relatively, yes. Like Sokuzan brings up the idea of that first prohibitory precept, don't kill, where like if we interrupt someone, we're killing what they had to offer us. But I'm not sure if that's where you were wanting to go with that.
I'm not sure.
Thank you. Conjugal.
Conjugal, I had that same thing come up about in terms of time. Seems like when you were talking there that it really brought home that hope and fear take us out of, like you've already said it, what is actually showing up. I don't know if there's anything more you can add in terms of time that for hope and fear.
It's interesting. I'm considering that as maybe it's even something that creates the time, like the separation where we, so it's like it has to create the time and then rob us of it. Is there anything more we could go deeper into that?
Not right now. I had another question though. In that same discussion at noon, we were saying, do not miss your life. That was part of the discussion. How is hope and fear part of that discussion?
To go back to looking at time with it, it seems like if we're really buying into time, we believe it's true, it's not just a concept, like everything is following suit with time. It seems like that's missing our life, or at least complicating it in a way we might not need to do. I hear the phrase coming back to me as I say it, which is robbing us of what's in front of us, but wouldn't hope and fear be what's in front of us. So it seems like on the path, the first step would be to recognize it, to sit down and see what those concepts are pointing to. Because I think it is, it would include everything you're saying around time, what Milka's questions are about, seem to all fit with that.
Control volume, it seems like hope and fear are cover-ups.
I think so too, yeah.
So what do they traditionally, like what would hope cover up traditional or usually?
Maybe some negativity, especially thinking of that hospital ad where it says this hospital gives me hope. Like I don't think that's a place you go in and try to preach the teaching of don't hope or don't fear or anything like that. Not that it's about don't anyway. But it comes back to the awareness, like are we aware of what we're doing when we do that? Seems like if you're trying to help cheer somebody up or make them look at something, but take them away from something that's difficult to look at. Like I think I shared that one of my acquaintances just lost his son um, at 18 to a motorcycle accident. And when he finally brought that up, we talked a little bit, and I can see how much he's using hope. Like in a tradition, like his family is Christian, so they just know that they're going to see him again. But it's a similar thing to for hope, maybe not that drastic, but I could see how much like hope was getting him through. Like the fact that he was even at work after 2 weeks of that, it's like you need to take probably 3 years off if that something like that happened.
Conjure bowing, it seems like there's different levels to fear. What do you see in terms of the core fear that we don't exist or that there's nothing other, there's nothing really there? Can you say something more about fear and the different levels of it or qualities of it? Is there a core fear, I guess is my real question.
I know I remember my first fear, like as a concept. I've shared this with Sokazon, but I had to be like 5 or younger because I was at the very first place I lived. But I remember this. This was the words for it. If I look at my heart, I'll die. So like very young, realizing like something was terrifying about this right here. To look there even would kill me. So I think like in animal sense, we're also living beings who can be attacked or killed. So there's a basic fear of stuff that's not necessarily crazy. Like if a bear goes into the room, you don't just meditate until it comes to you. You would probably jump out the window or the door. But it seems like when we stop when we stop being aware of that and we don't realize we're functioning out of fear. um, Maybe this isn't where you were going with it, but I know myself and other people start to breathe shallow. So like the experience of fear really starts to get into the body. And if we're in that fight or flight mode all the time, it's just not a good place to be as far as like your health. Is there anything different area you were wanting to go in there?
Well, that's part of what I was looking at was thinking of also of the fear that drives people away from this path, the fear that that this is too difficult or they're wasting their lives, they're missing out on life. Uh, so is there a core fear that that being here and looking at our minds brings up? So what you were talking about was kind of like a visceral, biologically based fear, but is there something, is there another fear that we're seeing here on this path?
Thank you. Thank you for clarifying. Um, and my apologies if I'm quiet. I'm trying to be louder. I think it's the fear, it's talked about in the tradition, as far as I know, of the fear of oblivion, the fear of not existing, or just anything in that general area. Can you help me more on that?
People running away from harsh teaching, demanding path. Is there a fear that's being covered up there?
I think so. I think it's just how I've been talking about it, about the um fear of not existing, the fear of having our beliefs challenged. We just come into situations with a lot of things that we just assume everyone thinks XYZ when we think XYZ. So that's a kind of a powerful reminder of how important the Sangha is, to have a group of people that are getting together to study, um, where that's the reason that we're together. It isn't a traditional friendship, not that we're enemies, but it seems like by the nature of getting together like that with various peoples over the teaching is going to bring that stuff up. Um, I know that sounds pretty vague right now. I'm trying to make it more concrete. It also just seems to be really different for a lot of people, where we might watch somebody, I think your words would like run away, and then their experience of it is a lot more calm and not really that big of a deal. Um, yeah. But basically the fear of non-existing, or almost like political in a sense, where if you're challenging something someone just views as common sense or right versus wrong, there's not a lot of wiggle room for that. So that whole area is potentially getting shaken up here with the practice and the teachings.
Andrew Bowing, do you have a hope? Do you see hope that you're hoping for something? You know, in your experience right now, or do you have a current hope or fear?
Yeah, I hope that I can actually correct some of my body stuff with Tai Chi. That's like my really basic day-to-day thing I'm trying to improve, where I could possibly turn back time a little bit and potentially have less uh, physical pain. So a hope for that my pain might go away or lessen considerably in a way that's like long lasting. Don't know that that's going to happen. Yeah, so is please.
So are you supposed to stop hoping?
No.
Isn't that bad?
Yes. Thank you.
Isn't that a bandit?
That's true.
What do you do with that?
I think we look at it, ask questions about it. Like I'll probably ask you questions about that the next time I'm in front of you to help clarify that.
Thank you.
Thank you. Conjurman.
Andrew Bowing. So if we hope, like in your example, you know, who could blame you for wanting less pain? But then there's this wanting something other than what is actually showing up.
Mhm.
So on one hand, hope is not bad. On the other hand, the practice is to receive what shows up. How do you resolve that tension, or do you not see a tension there?
This isn't what you're asking, but the thing that I noticed the most is how Sokuzan's like objectively in more pain than I am at any time, and he always shows up. So like all the times I have to go to sleep early, it's just I'm aware that Sokuzan's 85 and he's got more stamina, and it seems that way. He felt his head drop. It seems that way. Um, that's something I'm looking at too. I'm part curious and a little frustrated with it. And we've talked before, there's a story quality that gets jeopardized too. Like you almost don't want to feel better because you get a little identity of being the person who's in pain but shows up anyway. Is that where you were going? Norbu, will you,
Great enough.
I got hands raised everywhere. Pop it. I like-
Well,
There you go, there.
are you calling on me?
Yes, please, you were in Gasho, yeah?
Yes, yes. I was wondering if it seems like hope is sometimes a cover up for a fear of the opposite thing happening of what we're hoping. Okay. I hope I'm not in pain. I fear I will be.
Mhm.
So do you think it would be helpful to look at the other side of hope, what's really going on there maybe, Bowie?
I would say yes. It's helpful to look under every stone, everything that shows up in front of us on the path. Yeah, that's all I have for that. Thank you. Was it Mioka? Did you have your hand?
Yoke bowing is, it looks like there's big fear and little fear, and you were talking about it's a threat of our existence. Is that little fear that shows up in just everyday small actions also a threat to our existence?
Yes, I think.
Milk bowing, if we have a small fear that
Could you give an example of
we're gonna be late for work and because we don't want to look like the person who's late or something like that, being worried about what other people think in that fear, is that somehow threatening who we think we are?
Yeah, I think it is. Like you said it the first time, I think there was some identity quality with that. You don't want to be the person who's late for work. And it seems like maybe like a little nibble, but that's still hitting that structure of ego that we think we are. And if we're going to die, that's what's going down. And if that's who we think we are, that's pretty terrifying. But it does seem like on some little level that might be an entry. I'm thinking of the tortilla example, like maybe that's a way on the other side where you have a little opening to your fear through the more mundane situation.
Milk bowing, if we keep ignoring that and we keep having those little personality reference points, does that keep us from seeing who we are?
I don't think so. I think that's how we do it. We see the way that that functions and we can start observing how we're doing that all the time. I think it's more of a using the teachings to see where we're at already than it is using the teachings to try to go backwards and become a less neurotic person. I think that's what we're looking at, what you were just bringing up.
Milk bowing, if we don't give it awareness or we keep ignoring or shutting it out, does that accumulate in some way, that karma bowing?
I think it accumulates like in a sort of inverted sense where you can't ignore that forever. So if you've gotten a great track record of 30 years or 30 lifetimes, this still won't last. So almost sounds like you could just go in and do it more until you run out of ignorance and then something hits you in the head just right.
Milk bowing, how do I run out of ignorance?
You're like twice my age. Why are you asking me that?
Keep going.
Keep going. Just keep going. Good guy. Oh, thank you.
Ian, could I? Did you say something about the tortilla idea?
No, what are you talking about?
I
A tortilla?
thought
In the
you
Dharma
said
talk?
something about the tortilla idea.
I think that's something Trump Rinpoche. I didn't see his directly, but someone brought it up in a talk here once where like everyone has like a soft spot, and it might for one person it might just be tortillas. They just really like tortillas, and that's your entry point. Mine's cats. I think I just view them as infallible. They can't be bad cats. Anything more on that?
No, I just hadn't heard that.
Certainly. Chokadawa.
Chokadao bowing. Do the words hopelessness and fearlessness come up at all?
Can you say more?
I just remember Trump Rinpoche using those quite a bit, but they weren't exactly what people thought he meant by that. I don't know if they apply to this talk though.
Maybe. I'm not too sure. Any other way to go into that, perhaps?
Chokodalbang, if someone thought hopelessness meant not having hope,
Hmm.
well, how would you respond to that?
Thank you. And this wouldn't be my response. I think this is probably just in Trunk Bus text where, or no, Sogazan talks about it this way too, where hopelessness isn't a lack of hope, it's in the midst of the hope, or the fearlessness isn't absence of fear, it's in the midst of the fear. So you're not really hopeless or fearless if you've just found a way to ignore it or stay away from it.
So are you saying like, if I have intense hope and fear, which I did today, what? And there's like action wanting to come out of that. How do we work with that?
Everything we're talking about is this really relevant with what we read today. So it's in the addiction awareness book, I believe, where when we go to, like you said, there's like a way to get out of it. Maybe like there's a story that comes up, and if we do the story, the hope or fear will go away. That we could instead stay with the feeling. So we're trying to get away from that feeling. We've already left it if we're calling it hope and fear. There's already some kind of conceptualization going on there.
And then like storylines start swarming around that feeling, they can be changeable. You've had some experience with that, I think, as well.
Mhm.
How do you work with crazy storylines coming out of that kind of feeling?
I think that's a really, I mean, maybe not in the middle of it, but it can be interesting to see that where I'm thinking of how a feeling can come up with a story and that they seem like they're the same thing, but then you might work with that situation, but that feeling still shows up.
Mhm.
So there's a little bit of curiosity or even suspicion with how causal or how much of a relationship the story has with the feeling. Seeing it seems like, and they're maybe more coincident than they are causal, meaning that that feeling is showing up in and of itself. We also have another skanda of the concepts, and we're just putting those together. Like I feel this because I'm a separate being because of the five skandhas. That's talked about how they hold hands, but I don't think that that's necessary. It's not necessarily the case. So we can perhaps get an entry point seeing that we have feeling and we have concept. They're not necessarily even talking to each other. They're not separate. They're not happening at a different time, but they're not necessarily the same thing either.
Thank you for connecting it with the skandhas. It's helpful.
Okay.
Yoga bowing. Do you have any phrase fillers? And what is the hope and fear? Is there a subtle hope and fear that's showing up when you look at that?
Yes, thank you. I would say so. I have a nervous laugh. I know you're generous in offering that you recognize that in yourself. I do it here too. This talk's full of them where I put little ums and pauses in places. I think part of that's necessary with the spoken language. There's even a thing in sign language where it's basically you're not allowed to talk yet, but I haven't thought of my next word. So there's even a sign for phrase fillers. But this is totally tangential, I think, but it shows up in that language, so it must be something we kind of have to do. Well, can you just ask a question again? I kind of spaced out.
Yoga bowing. I was curious about if you see some kind of fear happening as a phrase filler showing up.
I think the activity of the phrase fillers to fill up space that we're maybe uncomfortable feeling. Yeah, just the filling up of space. Is there more to that?
Milk bowing, is that a kind of paranoia bowing?
I think so. That you're afraid of what people might think of you. You're afraid of what you said or what you will say. There's a lot of like doubling up on the communication there. But again, not something necessarily to fix or change.
Milk bowing. What else, when you're looking at phrase fillers, what else shows up for you around that bowing?
There's a couple times where I might use that, not like intentionally, but if I'm trying to hold the floor the whole time and I'm just talking at people, I might, so it's called a ramping, like you ramp up and you ramp up. You kind of get stuck in your own like tornado, like where the speaker doesn't even want to keep talking, but you've kind of been doing it so long, you're just impulsively saying words. And not that you need to think about it, but you're not really considering like how that looks. I feel like I'm drifting off what you're asking though.
Milk bowing, no, that's helpful. I'm just, yeah, curious about the paranoia part of what gives rise to these pauses and phrase fillers that we feel we need to fill up what's happening.
I know to speak a little personally here, I used to think, I probably still do, that like being precise with your communication was the intention, and I would try to be precise by explaining the crap out of the situation because I want to get to the more specific thing. But just watching book studies and myself ask questions over all these years, seeing like how I think concision is better than precision, just getting to the point, maybe being a little vulnerable there that you didn't actually ask exactly what you wanted to ask, but you're asking it the best you can. That whole area is really fascinating and irritating to see it in myself, to see it in other people. But we have to say something, so it's not like we can go out and just get rid of all of our phrase fillers. But we might spend a little time, or maybe I'm suggesting that we spend a little time just having some curiosity, or even listening to your own recording when you're asking questions, like watch the Dharma talk that you happen to ask questions in and just listen to yourself. I usually go back and watch a video where I have found it valuable in my own practice to go back and listen to either a talk I've given and watch myself, or watch the talk of Sokuzan's where I'm asking questions and just hearing that. A lot of times I can feel really stupid, like, or like, why am I still talking? Like right now. Jishin.
Machine bowing. I don't know how to ask that question, and I'm not even sure whether there is a question.
Do you
But
want me to answer first then?
through the whole listening to your talk and questions and responses,
Her hands go up since she said that too.
I've been trying to connect with fear and hope, and I realized that they feel actually very differently. I'm wondering, actually, it was Narbulinka who asked the question, which somehow gave me the direction. Do you sense that the fear is something which is much closer to who we are, that we can sense it, like physically in our senses, versus hope, which is, to me, it's an outflow of the mind, some imaginary future which I'm creating. So do you sense the difference between those two, and what would you suggest as a way of working with both of them, if that difference can indicate like different types of work? Bowing.
Thank you for sharing that. At first, I would say that that's not how it shows up for me. Like I wouldn't say everyone sees hope and fear as different or not different. And even the way you described it, more of an outflow. For me, both of those aren't necessarily outflows until we hook up the vocal cords. And it's not that we're going to be successful at that, but I think both of those, when you hear that teaching, don't hook up the vocal cords. Feels like hope and fear both get some tension on them. But yeah, so that's just fascinating for me to hear how you see that differently. And any suggestion I would give is basically just sit as much as you can and receive. I don't know much about working with them like as abstracts individually. Sometimes people might sit for like an hour and then write down a phrase or a question, keep it under their cushion. And if it's something you really wanted to go into, you might sit for an hour, pull that up for about 5 minutes or so, and just really sink into that and then go back to sitting, sort of like making nice, spacious bookends around the question to go into. So I think it's helpful if that's showing up for you, especially that you could look at it the way it's showing up to you and maybe, yeah, if you don't want to just sit with it, you could try going into it intentionally with writing something down or finding a book that helps trigger those things and having a study around it, maybe including some people. So you're not just all on your own. And not from the lonely aspect, but when we're on our own, we read stuff. It seems to be where we can just validate that we're understanding. And you've been to, I mean, you show up to every single book study, I think, so you understand what that's about, I'm sure, to study with a group of people.
Thank you.
Thank you.
We have, I mean, 3 more minutes before Sokazan leaves and we end 5 to 7.
So, ooh. Any takers? We got time for a question or so.
Conjure bowing, I was going to ask about how hope and fear reinforce our ego, our identity. Like, do most of us have one that we really are known for, like a lot of hope or a lot of fear?
I think so, that maybe not everyone, but I'm not gonna call anybody's name out, but I thought of someone who's just seeping hope like all the time. Like I can't even look at them; they're just so hopeful.
That's funny.
Well, then you have like some of the history I've been in with like heavy metal bands. That's all about fear. Like you become the scary thing instead. That's what that's about. Because they're afraid of being afraid.
Conjure bowing, so
Mhm.
how can we work with that? I mean, when we see fear and hope or hear ourselves working with those two concepts, is there any opportunity to kind of look at the identity or the ego that is wrapped up in that?
I've always been fascinated with that. I'm happy you did the hand sign to like look within. 'Cause to this day, I've not been able to turn anything around and look back this way. So it just kind of pisses me off. But I think maybe that's part of the practice is to see that you can't, if you were somebody, couldn't you just turn around and look at it? Um, I don't know. But hope and fear both, at least for me, are just very visceral and they're located kind of in the same area. And maybe not even that different of a sensation. The story around it might tell you what it is, if it's good or bad.
Conjure bowing, where is ego located for you?
I don't know. Yeah,
Where is Ö Lam?
where is Ö Lam?
Where is Waldo?
There you go. That's if you find me, let me know. Um, I don't know. It's hard to even know what ego is pointing to sometimes. Like it's such a conceptual thing, and it's not even the word that they used in. Like, it's not Sanskrit, so we're completely hijacking some psycho, like analytical terms, assuming we know what that means, and then if the ego is not real, does that mean that there's not actually something defined with that, or it's something that's constructed? The way it shows up for me, to maybe cut to the chase, is it's like a structure of beliefs and disbeliefs that we carry around and apply to everything. So there's a reference point, like we see something, we refer to this, and you're kind of making the tornado. But it feels like the awareness just goes the one direction, like you can't really turn it around, but you can see that structure of ego right in front of you all the time. So I can project it onto your head, or I don't know that I have that much say so. Mhm. I think we can close. Thank you, everybody.